Namo Buddhaya. Welcome everyone to another video. So today, let's talk about loneliness and how we can face this situation. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about two things. And the first one is the loneliness, and the second one is the solitude, which is more reframed version of being alone. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about loneliness. When we are around people, when we are living with people, and when we are in relationships with people, normally we feel happy. We feel that we are content, right? And we feel this joyfulness within ourselves. But when they are not around us, or when they leave us, sometimes when we have to depart from them, normally we feel depressed, sad, or lonely, or we feel like no one cares about us. So this is the feeling of loneliness. If we analyze this emotion of loneliness, we can find that we have become happy because of the people around us, because of their reaction, because of their way of behavior. That was the reason that we became happy. Simply, it means that we have given the key of our own happiness to other people. So when they leave our life, sometimes when they depart from ourselves, sometimes when they fade away from our life, what happens to us is we become unhappy, we become sad, we become depressed, and we feel like no one is caring for us. There is no one to help for me. That is what we are thinking. So how we can deal with this? Well, that is where we come to the topic of solitude. Supreme Buddha advised the monks to practice this practice of being solitude. So what do you mean by solitude? So first of all, let's compare the loneliness to the solitude. Then you can take some idea about that. In loneliness, when you're lonely, you're thinking for someone to come to your life and make you happy. That means you're depending on others. Your happiness depends on others. But in solitude, you try to find the happiness within yourself. When you find the happiness inside yourself, you don't want to depend on another person. You don't want to depend on second person. You can find your happiness within yourself. And that is what the practice of solitude gives us. So when you're being solitude, or simply when you're being alone, now there are the people talk about this like the loneliness and being alone is two different things, right? So when you're being alone or when you're being in solitude, you're happy. You're not finding the happiness from these outer sources. You find the happiness within yourself. So Buddha teaches us to look at this loneliness not as something to be sad, not as something negative. Buddha teaches us to look at this loneliness something that is beneficial for you, something that is positive. So how we can use this loneliness, or how we can reframe this loneliness to be positive? Well, if you think about whenever you are being alone, you have more time for yourself, right? You have a bigger freedom for yourself. You can think about yourself. You can reflect more about yourself, and you can practice meditations, or you can think about your health and do some practices about that. You can do some self-development techniques, so you can improve yourself. So when you use that time, when you use that loneliness for good things, then you become more positive about that. Then you will never feel these sad or depressing states. So let me tell you a little story how Buddha felt lonely at one time. Actually, this incident happened to the Buddha before he became enlightened. We call him the Bodhisattva. When he was Bodhisattva, he was practicing this self-mortification for 6 years. He gave lots of hardships to this body. He did some extreme meditations in the jungle. So there were 5 monks who were helping the Bodhisattva. So he practiced these self-mortification meditations for 6 years and he mastered that. Finally, he came to the conclusion of that I cannot achieve this enlightenment by self-mortificating or by giving this extreme hardship to this body. So he decided to find this middle way. So what he did was, first of all, he took his bowl and he went to the village and he got some foods to eat. Because he thought that to do the meditations, I need to have this physical energy. But those 5 monks who were helping to Bodhisattva, who were expecting the enlightenment from the Bodhisattva through this self-mortification, was so confused because they saw that the Bodhisattva is having these foods. Then those 5 monks thought, like, now he's not going to achieve this enlightenment. The enlightenment can only be achieved by this self-mortification. So they never believed on the Bodhisattva. So what they did was, they left the Bodhisattva. Now our Maha Bodhisattva was all alone in the middle of the jungle. There was no one to help him. There was no one to care about him. No one knew about him. He was all alone. But he didn't think about that loneliness as something depressed or something negative. So he thought, now I have more time for myself. I can do my meditations freely. There was no one to think about me. So I must use this time for my self-development. That is what Maha Bodhisattva thought. So that is the way that we also should think about this loneliness. If you are feeling lonely, if you are having some kind of loneliness situations in your life, use that time, use that valuable time to create a better life for yourself, because you have more time. You can do meditations. You can stick into a daily routine of the self-development. You can do meditations, you can do workouts, you can walk for some time, and you can be with this nature, read a book, or learn something new, practice meditations, do exercises. These things can be done when you are all alone. So rather than feeling depressed about the situations that you are in, why can't we become more happy about the time that we are spending alone, right? So practice this, okay? So if people comes to your life, let them come. If people walks away from your life, let them walk away. But you have to be by yourself. You have to think about yourself. That is what you have to think, and that is what you have to do in this valuable time. So I think you got some idea about the loneliness and being in the solitude. So practice the solitude and make your life more better. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Welcome and welcome back to another video. If there is one thing in common in this world that all living beings search for, that is the happiness. We all like to be happy. We all seek happiness in this world. If I ask from you, would you like to be happy in your life? What will be your answer? You will say, of course, I want to be happy in my life. I want this peaceful state. I need to be in that. That is your answer. That is the answer of all living beings. Buddha says that all living beings likes to be happy and they seek the happiness. If you really think about our life, we are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. Let me tell that again. We are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. That means we are pursuing happiness, we are chasing and we are seeking for happiness, but yet we have not found it. So, what is the reason for this not finding happiness? Why we don't find happiness in our life? We are seeking it, we are finding for it, but we don't find it. What is the reason? Well, the Buddha teaches us that we are finding or we are seeking this happiness from a source that the happiness does not exist. Because we are seeking happiness from external world. We are seeking happiness from these materialistic things. Well, when you seek happiness from materialistic things or external world, you get pleasure, but that is not happiness. Pleasure is something temporary and it gives you this instant gratification. But in happiness, the happiness is long-lasting and it gives you this happiness or the contentment about yourself. So that is why Buddha teaches us that you're finding the happiness from a source where the happiness does not exist. So the more you find it, the more you become frustrated. So, will we ever be able to find happiness in our life? The Buddha answers this question. He says, yes, you can find happiness in your life. How to do that? If you look closely to the first and the second verses of Dhammapada, Buddha says, if one with an impure mind speaks or acts, the suffering will follow him like a cart wheel following the ox. If with an impure mind one speaks or acts, the suffering will follow him. And in the next verse, Buddha says, if with a pure mind one speaks or acts, the happiness will follow him like a shadow following a man. So that means the happiness and the sadness entirely depends on the purity and the impurity of our mind. When our mind is pure, we can find the happiness. So, how can we gain this purity in our mind in order to find the happiness? Well, Buddha teaches us there are a lot of things that you can do to make your mind pure. So today, I'm going to share with you a few things that can give you the happiness in your life, that you can find the happiness in your life. First thing, accepting the reality of life will give you the happiness. You know, life is full of ups and downs. Sometimes you have good days, sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we have beautiful memories, sometimes we also have miserable memories. So life is not something that is going equally every day. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you realize this reality, you can face these situations successfully, right? It is not always this bad experience makes us frustrated. It is our reaction towards this bad experience makes us frustrated. Whenever you get a bad experience or a bad day or a bad situation, tough situation, difficult situation, you have two choices. Either you can focus on the pain and feel miserable about that situation, or you can focus on the lesson that bad situation teaches us and learn from it and start growing your life. So, if you accept the reality of life, it is not temporary. Sometimes the people around us are not in our control. We cannot control their reactions. We cannot control their opinions. So when you realize these situations, you can face those situations successfully. That is one thing, accepting reality of the life. Number 2, Buddha said, be generous. Practicing generosity is a major practice in Buddhism. Well, in Buddhism, the generosity is known as dana. In dana, Buddha says that you have to give without any expectations. We have to give and we have to dedicate towards others without expecting anything in return. That is one thing that we have to practice. Most of the time, we like to hold on to things or gather the things towards us. That is what people think. When you gather more, when you collect more things, you will get rich and you will gain happiness. But that does not give you the happiness. It will give you the pleasure, but it is temporary. So what we have to do, Buddha says, be generous, give, help others, dedicate a part of your life on behalf of others. When you do that, when you become more generous, let's say like this, you gave some foods to a poor person, let's say like that. When you see that person is having those foods and overcoming his hunger and making his life much better, you can be happy by seeing that. When you become happy like that, you feel happy about yourself, right? Nothing can give you that happiness. Like by eating a good food, by dressing a nice dress, you cannot gain that happiness. You don't feel happy about yourself, right? Let's say after hundred of years later, maybe 10 decades later, when you think about that incident, I gave this food to this poor person. When you remind that, you feel happy. Even then you feel happy. That means happiness is long-lasting. So Buddha says, be generous, help people, do something nice every day for a person. That is one thing we can do. And number 3, forgiving. Forgiving is one of the most important things that we can do to create happiness in our life. We have to forgive ourselves. Also, we have to forgive others too. Because forgiving, when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you are saying okay to others' mistakes. It's okay. No, you're not saying like that. When you forgive, you make your heart free. So when you forgive, it's not for that person, it is for you. And also we have to forgive for ourselves. There are so many mistakes that we all have done in the past. If you hold on to past, and if you make this present moment miserable, that will not give you the happiness. So what do we have to do? Whatever the bad thing that we have done in the past, we have to have this ability to forgive ourselves and start all over again. We all have that ability, right? We all have that privilege to start our life again and make it a better one. Okay? So no one is perfect in this world. We all have done mistakes. One thing that we have to do is to forgive and start doing good things. So these are 5 things that we can do to create happiness in our life. And also, there is one happiness that is called the ultimate happiness in this world that the Buddha teaches us. That is called Nibbana or Nirvana. That is the enlightenment. When you realize about the reality of this life, and when you remove this desire or the craving that arises within your mind, then Buddha says that is the ultimate happiness. Simply, the Nibbana means Ragakkayo, Dosakkayo, Mohakkayo, Nibbana. That means removing of the desire, anger, and the delusion of the mind is called the enlightenment. So that is the highest level of happiness that we all can reach. So when you practice these practices, right, when you engage yourself in wholesome state, that will create you the happiness in the life. So practice these things and make your life a happier one. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some thoughts of the Buddha about praise and blame. Now, when we think about our life, when people criticize us, when people blame us, what is our normal reaction? We feel angry about ourselves in the first place. And we tend to hate that person, of course. And also we feel sad in the same time. This is our normal reaction. And in the other hand, when people praises us, what is our reaction? We feel so much happy. We tend to think like, I'm the best. Well, Buddha teaches us these things are two extremes. Becoming too much happy when people praises you is one extreme. Becoming too much sad when people criticizes you is another extreme. So what do we have to do in such situations? The Buddha says you have to maintain a moderate mind in such situations. So how to do that? Well, let me tell you a nice story about how Buddha dealt with such a situation. One day, while the Buddha was walking down the street with a group of monks, two people came behind the Buddha and they started talking each other. One was praising the Buddha. One was saying so much good qualities and good things about the Buddha, and the other person started blaming the Buddha. He started criticizing the Buddha. But in that case, in that instance, Buddha didn't react to such things. What he did was he kept walking. He went his journey. And in the other day, the monks gathered around and they were discussing about the incident that had happened in the last day. They were talking, it's really amazing that these two people came up to us and one was praising and in the same instance, the other one also criticizing us. We got the blame and the praise in the same time. Isn't that wonderful? Then while these monks was talking about this, the Buddha came to that place and said, "What are you talking about?" Then the monks said, "Oh, Venerable Sir, we were talking about the incident that was happened yesterday." Then the Buddha said, "Dear monks, when someone criticizes you, maybe when someone criticizes about the Buddha or his teachings or his followers about you, you should not be angry with them. You should not be displeased with them." Why? Then the Buddha said, if you become angry, if your mind is covered with anger, what is happening within you is you lose the ability to decide whether that criticism or whether that blame is true or false. You cannot understand about that because your mind is covered with anger. Anger has overcome your mind. So with an angry mind, you cannot decide what is good or bad. So in that case, Buddha taught us you should not be angry. And you should wisely reflect about what he or she is telling us. Whether that bad quality or whether that criticism, whether that fault is within us or not. You have to think like that. Right? If that fault or if that mistake is within you, then what do you have to do? You have to correct it. Make it correct. Develop your life. So that is one thing that you have to do. And if there is no such thing, or if that person is falsely accusing you, if there is no such mistake inside your mind, inside your life, and still that person is criticizing you, what do you have to do? Just let that go. Don't care about that, because it is not in your life. You should not be angry. That is one thing that you have to do. When you practice in a such way, what happens to you is you maintain a moderate mind. You're not going to an extreme. You're not becoming too much angry. You're not feeling too much sad about yourself. That is one thing that we can do. And in the other hand, when people praises us, we become too much happy. The Buddha said, no, you should not be too much happy about that. The Buddha said, when someone praises you, when someone says good things about you, what do you have to do? Don't be too much happy, because when you become too much happy, it also acts as a hindrance to your mind. When you become overjoyed, you lose your ability to realize or find what is good or what is bad, whether that good thing is within my mind or not. You have to wisely reflect about your life. Is that good thing, is that good quality is within my mind or within my life? Am I doing that good thing or not? If you're doing that good thing, you don't want to be too much happy, because it is already inside your life. You're doing that, right? So in that way, you're not becoming too much happy about the things, right? So these are the two extremes. When we bring our mind to the moderate way, not becoming too much happy, not becoming too much sad, then you can maintain a peaceful mind. Then you will not think about anyone or think about yourself that I am the best in the world. Because when people praises you, you think like, okay, I'm the best in here, right? That is not being humble. That is something like a swollen-headed person do, right? And the other hand, when people criticizes us, what you have to do, we should not be too much sad, right? If it is wrong, if the fault is within us, we have to correct it. And if the fault is not within us, just ignore it. That is what you have to do. So these are the thoughts of the Buddha about praise and blame. So practice this moderate mind whenever you are facing the praise and the blame in your life. Namo Buddhaya.